So listen to this. Thomas Muller is not a good dribbler. He isn't fast, neither his heading or finishing are particularly impressive, and he is definitely not strong. But he could not care less about any of that. Because Muller has won more trophies than Cristiano Ronaldo, Pele or Johan Cruyff. He is closing in on the goal tallies of Didier Drogba, Alessandro Del Piero and Wayne Rooney, and he has more assists than Kevin De Bruyne, Angel Di Maria, Xavi, Iniesta, and damn near any other player in history. Yet, if you read any article about him, for a moment you'd swear you were reading about the worst footballer in the world. Awkward, unrefined, accidental, clumsy, amateurish, skinny-legged, knobbly-kneed, gangly, a Bambi on ice who should not be a footballer. Yes, Thomas Muller is all of that, but saying that he looks awkward is like underestimating a T-Rex on account of his small arms. As one journalist famously said, Muller does not beat you with skill, he does not beat you with speed, he doesn't beat you with strength, Muller just beats you. Watching him, you will always get that feeling of, I could do that too, but do not fall for his trap. Muller is the best awkward player in the world, and I don't even need to mention, just yet, how he has arguably the highest football IQ in history, because from birth, that awkwardness has made this guy a master of the unashamedly inelegant art of stabbing the ball home from unlikely angles with unlikely parts of his head or legs. Look, when Bayern found him, it was just some scrawny altar boy living with his grandparents in a town of just 2,000 people right by the Alps. His favorite childhood story was how once he had pooped on his grandma's lawn and been forced to scoop it up with his favorite plastic shovel from his sandbox. The most interesting thing his parents could tell you about him was that weirdly he had learned to speak before he learned how to walk, which, to be fair, makes a lot of sense. Regardless, the day the scouts first arrived in town, not even his name stood out on the team sheet. He was no Neymar, no Zinedine Zidane. Thomas Muller was statistically the most common name in Germany. However, what he didn't know was that his grandpa, on his deathbed, asked the family to let him watch Bayern just one more time and made him completely obsessed with the club. So much so that, already preparing for that day, over the previous year, Muller had scored 120 of his team's 170 goals. Fact or fiction, you decide for yourself, but a lot of German newspapers have claimed that, and indeed that day, he scored 7 more, instantly dropping every scout in a 100-meter radius to his knees. After 8 years at Bayern, with every one of his academy coaches losing their minds trying to understand what in the world made his kid so special, Jurgen Klinsmann brought him in to play with the first team and nothing. Klinsmann fell for his trap. He thought he had seen enough, but what he didn't know is that, as one journalist once said, Muller is a love at fourth sight. If you watch him once, he seems average, twice, and you start realizing something is off, but by the 4th time, you'll finally see it. And thankfully, after almost allowing Ralf Rangnick to snatch him out of their grasp for 1.5 million euros, Klinsmann was sacked and Van Gaal came in. Van Gaal was one of the greatest talent IDs in the world. One look at him and he famously told everyone that no matter what, with me, Muller always plays. In one swoop, Muller went from being handed 28 minutes total over a full season and getting transfer listed to playing every single league match over the next 4 years. And in return, he led Bayern to the top of the world. 35 goal contributions, the winning goal against title rivals Schalke and a hat-trick in the second-to-last match day to finally clutch the Bundesliga title for Bayern, top scorer of the German Cup to take the double, the Young Player of the Year award, and in the Champions League, he repeatedly showed up, getting an assist at Old Trafford to force Bayern through on away goals, and another in the semis to get them all the way to the final, where, had they won, they would have taken the treble. But sadly for him, Mourinho had other plans. Regardless then, even if he had only one appearance with the national team on his resume, the Germans were going through a crisis, with the legendary Gerd Müller himself saying that, back in my day, the strikers we have in the national team now would not be allowed to even sniff the ball, but Thomas, he's an incredible young boy and he's the one they should take to the World Cup. After that, Joachim Löw had no choice but to follow his advice. He jammed him into the starting 11 on the opening day, and Muller assisted their first 8 minutes in before grabbing one for himself. By the third match, he was already assisting their only goal to save them from a group stage elimination. And in the last 16, he made sure the whole world knew a new prototype had just hit the market. With one touch, he left Podolski with all the space in the world to put Germany 2-0 in front. And once England scored and watched in shock as they were denied of one of the most famous ghost goals in history, Muller demolished any hopes they might have had of a comeback, once again finding acres of space where there should have been none to score his first, and just 3 minutes later, doing it all again. 4 touches, 3 goal contributions against one of the most prestigious national teams in the world, and in the end, as the journalists came trying to ask him questions, all he wanted to do was say hi to his grandma. But again, if that could convince anyone that Muller wasn't so dangerous after all, then, with Maradona having refused to sit next to him in a press conference, claiming he had no idea who he was, that he thought he was just a ball boy, Muller proceeded to score against Argentina just 3 minutes into the match to put him back in his place. And man, had he not been suspended for the semi-final after getting his second yellow card in the tournament, maybe the Spain match could have been a lot different and maybe they could have made the final. But regardless, in the third place playoff, Muller scored again to secure the bronze medal, the Young Player of the Tournament award, and the World Cup Golden Boot at 20 years of age. Still, even if before the end of the year, Muller would already be putting his name among the Ballon d'Or nominees, things at Bayern had changed. For the next 2 years, though he would still take home 70 goal contributions, his form had become far more irregular, at one point being benched by Van Gaal, and once he got sacked, playing under Jupp Heynckes, Muller's goals dried up even further, scoring just 3 from October to April, being benched for the Champions League semi-finals after Dortmund ran away with the league title for the second year in a row, then, somehow, being brought back for the Champions League final, scoring what should have been the winning goal 7 minutes from the end, and watching Drogba force it all into extra time, where Robben would miss a penalty before Schweinsteiger and Olic did the same in the shootout, choking the Champions League title for the second time in 3 years, which Muller took very, very personally. To start off the next season, he scored the winner in the Super Cup. Then, he put down 14 goal contributions in the league's first 8 matches to take 8 consecutive wins, the greatest start in the history of the Bundesliga. And sure, the next match they did lose, but that was their only league defeat of the season. By the end, they were first, 25 points ahead of Dortmund, and I'll spoil it for you already. This was the first of 11 league titles in a row. And still, that wasn't the most impressive part of his season. In the Champions League, yet again, they reached the final. For the last 16, they drew 3-3 on aggregate and only went through because Muller scored and assisted away at the Emirates Stadium. Against Juventus, as one newspaper wrote, supernatural, Muller attempted an hilariously small number of passes. He was the only player not to commit a foul or be fouled. He wasn't offside once. The only reason he needed the referee out there was to blow the whistle after his goal. And yet, he was somehow the central player on the pitch, passive-aggressively dominant, suffocatingly ever-present. And if that seemed like dark magic, then he scored 3 and assisted a 4th against prime Barcelona to demolish them 7-0 on aggregate. And in the final, he just told his teammates, if we lose 3 finals in 4 years, they'll be right, we're chokers. And a week later, instead, they were treble winners. According to many, the best team in the world. But Muller, though he was their top scorer and just shy of being their top assist provider too, well, when the Ballon d'Or rankings came, he was only 17th, below 4 of his own teammates. And looking back at it now, I can't stop myself from feeling like it only happened because it was way easier to spot a great dribbler or a great finisher than it was to decipher an enigma like Muller, to understand the genius of one of the smartest players in history. For years, football analysts couldn't even agree what his position or what his role on the pitch was. They just knew it worked. And they had to wait until he himself explained it to them. He said, I am a Raumdeuter. You can translate it however you want, a space interpreter, invader, investigator, but I like to put it more simply. Muller is a master of space. To paraphrase Joachim Löw, his first thought is always where should I be, where could I put the ball in order to maximize my team's chances of scoring a goal. Muller found a sport where all athletes were becoming near-perfect specimens where no single physical trait could truly make you stand out, so he decided to play it like a game of chess, to develop a near-perfect understanding of the game and become unpredictable, being at the right place, at the right time, always, and with full intent of doing as much damage as possible. Quick passes, fewer touches, perfectly timed runs, clinical execution. It's like he's seeing the game from above, on another plane of existence. It's mind over matter. So when the time comes, there is no pressure on him. He could not care less. And the next season was his chance to prove that none of this had ever been luck. Despite having just won the treble, Jupp Heynckes stepped down so Pep Guardiola could take over the club. At the eyes of most pundits, only the most technical players would survive his possession-based philosophy. For someone like Muller, they believed this was a death sentence. Instead, over the next 3 years, despite losing possession more often than any of his teammates, Muller became Guardiola's absolute favorite. Featuring in 148 of his 161 matches in charge, 22 more than any other player. Scoring 79 goals, 12 more than the second best, and providing 47 assists, 16 more than anyone else. He was now undeniable, and for those refusing to see reason, after leaving Bayern one German Super Cup away from taking every single trophy available in Pep's first season, he joined Germany for his second World Cup and did it all again. To open things up, a hat-trick against Portugal. In the second match, an assist to clinch a draw against Ghana. By the third, their only goal against the United States. And after assisting the extra-time goal that allowed them to squeeze past Algeria, he came back in the semi-finals, opened the scoring against Brazil, assisted Klose for the second, then assisted Kost for the third, and eventually assisted Schürrle for the seventh, becoming the poster boy for the greatest World Cup humiliation of all time. And 5 days later, thanks to Mario Götze, they had snatched the World Cup title right out of the hands of Lionel Messi. At just 24 years of age, Thomas Muller had 10 World Cup goals to his name, just 2 off of Pele, 4 off of Gerd Müller, and 6 away from the all-time record. Not to mention, he had already won damn near every trophy a player possibly could. By the time he stepped back in Germany, he had Van Gaal, now Man United's manager, coming in with a contract offer Muller described as astronomical and an £88 million transfer bid that would have made him the most expensive player of all time. But instead, he stayed, welcomed in new signing Robert Lewandowski, kept on banging in goals until the holiday season, and was rewarded with a 5th place finish at the Ballon d'Or. I could still argue that he should have placed higher, but I'll spare you the rant. With every season under Guardiola, he kept being afforded more and more freedom. After all, it was getting to a point where really only Ronaldo and Messi could challenge Muller's numbers. By his final season under Guardiola, he was dropping 40 goal contributions in the space of just 6 months. Even Messi would go on to win the Ballon d'Or that year, only managed 9 more over that period. Matter of fact, I'll go a step further. Over the previous 4 seasons, Muller had 38 goal contributions in the Champions League. It was also only 2 away from Messi. Guardiola had arrived fearful of what it would be like to manage a team without such a genius amongst its ranks, and left, having nothing more to say about Muller than that he was one of the all-time greatest football players. Though, to be fair, Ancelotti would see things a bit differently. It's not that Ancelotti failed to realize how special Muller was. He himself said that a player with that kind of intelligence and tactical awareness is hugely rare. But the truth is that, as Muller said, I don't know what qualities a coach wants to see, but mine seem not to be in demand. So that, added to 75 days out on injury, more than he had had over his entire career, meant that for the first time in 7 years, Muller struggled for minutes, at times being dropped for big matches as his goal tally dropped into the single digits. And even if he still reached second place in the league's assist charts, everyone could see Ancelotti was not about to change his mind. And maybe that was why 10 matches into the following season, a group of 5 key players turned against him, reportedly Ribéry, Robben, Muller and Boateng, ultimately leading to his sacking after a humiliating 3-0 defeat to PSG, prompting Jupp Heynckes to come out of retirement and run it back so hard that despite having just 3 goal contributions in the first 11 matches of the season, Muller Muller would go off for the remaining 34, hitting 33 contributions by the end of the season. Though, really, this would not be the end of his troubles. Following a tragic World Cup campaign that saw Germany fall to the champions' curse and get kicked out in the group stage, Niko Kovac took over the club and Muller dropped back into the single digits, going as far as being permanently dropped from the national team by Joachim Löw alongside Boateng and Mats Hummels, feeding the rumors that, as he approached his 30s, he was now past his best, with one newspaper going as far as claiming that everyone had stopped caring about him. To which, all he did was post an Instagram story assuring everyone that the game is not over yet. What happened next was the ultimate proof that we were dealing with an all-time great. After starting his 12th season at the club, repeatedly getting benched by Kovac, who insisted that he wanted to build his team around Coutinho, once again Muller watched the same manager who tried to bench him get sacked just 16 matches into the season with Bayern down to 4th place, only for Hansi Flick to come in, deposit all hope on him, and send him on one of the most incredible redemption arcs of all time, evolving into a new version of himself, more selfless than ever, shocking everyone during the pandemic by how vocal he was on the pitch, commanding his team like a general match after match, putting his playmaking duties above his goal scoring like never before, and turning Lewandowski into a monster, damn near launching him straight into the Ballon d'Or. By the end of the season, not only had he handed Bayern the title again and pulled 8 goals and 17 assists in the 23 league matches for which Flick was in command, coming out of nowhere to snatch away the Bundesliga's all-time assists record, but he had 25 of them across all competitions. 3 more than Neymar ever managed, 4 more than Ronaldo, and only 5 off of Messi's greatest ever season. And yet, as per usual, that wasn't quite the highlight of the year, having once again scored twice and assisted another against Barcelona to demolish them 8-2 this time around. Muller had launched Bayern straight into another Champions League final for the 3rd time in his career, 1 match off of a treble, and on this one, as The Guardian wrote, Muller showed PSG's £400 million attacking trio how to be a winner. No doubt Neymar will hear the thundering hooves of Thomas Muller when he goes to sleep tonight. Now, already 31, with 2 travels to his name and a squad full of new talent desperate for a spot, it would have been more than understandable if once for all Muller had finally let go. But instead, not only did he take both Super Cups at the start of the next season to become the most decorated German footballer in history, but he dropped 39 more goal contributions, forcing the national team to come back with their tail between their legs, asking him to join them once more. And even after Lewandowski left for Barcelona and Nagelsmann replaced Flick, he finished his 14th season at the club by racking up 25 more assists, sending his total to 75 over the previous 3 seasons, more than any other player in the world, 20 more than second place Kevin De Bruyne. Such a gap that at one point the difference between him and second place was larger than that between De Bruyne and 22nd place Kylian Mbappe, with Muller at 33 years of age finally getting some proper award recognition for the first time in his career, being named Bayern's Player of the Season. Ever since then, Muller has finally started giving the new kids a chance, finally fading into the background only to watch as after taking them to 11 league titles in a row, they immediately conceded the next one to Leverkusen.